Hey, Councilman.
Hey, Director.
All right, so we see people trickling in. We're going to start the webinar. We're going to start the meeting in just a few minutes. Dean, do we want, I see someone from your office is in the queue. Should we promote them to a panelist? Do you need one on the call? I can't hear you, Dean. Oh yeah, Dean, you're on mute.
Chris, I'm prepared to do it. Juan and I went through it, and the only reason I would need him if there was a highly technical question that I couldn't answer, but I think I'm ready to go. So it's up to you, but I think we're prepared to move with just me.
Let's bring one in just in case. RJ, I'm not
Yeah,
able to,
yeah, I just
yeah,
promoted him to panelist, so I think he's
thank you.
joining now.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, there he is.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you. Also, RJ, I may not be a host because I'm not able to do all the,
You should
I
be a
don't see.
co-host now.
There
Your
we go.
co-host now.
Yeah, there we go.
There we go. All right. I think we can get started. Good evening, all. My name is Chris Brown. I'm the Director of Community Development here with the City of Hoboken. Tonight, we are here to discuss a redevelopment project at 1501 Adams Street, known as Site 4 in the North End redevelopment area, located between 15th, 16th, Grand and Adams Street. Tonight, this is a community meeting, so the format will be a presentation of the project, followed by a question and answer period uh, from members of the public and with panelists who are best equipped to answer those questions. So before we get started, I will introduce or I'll hand the proverbial mic over to Councilman Phil Cohen to give some opening remarks. Councilman?
Thank you, Director. Hi, I'm Councilman Phil Cohen. I am the councilman who represents the Fifth Ward of Hoboken, which is where this property is located. I also chair the Community Development Committee. I want to thank everyone for being here this evening to hear this presentation. This is an important presentation because it is an important block of our Northwest redevelopment plan. And we're going to be hearing tonight from Dean Marchetto. Dean is the architect who has put together a presentation for us, which will go through his vision for this. After him, you're going to hear from RJ Theofeld, who is with the City of Hoboken. RJ is nodding his head, and he's got his headphones on. And RJ is with the City Planning Department. And then it's going to be open for Q&A. So if you have questions, I would ask you to save them for the end so that you get to hear the full presentation. Maybe your questions will be answered part of the presentations. But I know this is a site that many people know as the Poggi site. You know it because it has the sign Poggi Press on the front, and it was discussed as a possible location for the community center, which ultimately that was not the direction that the city took. But this is going to be a different kind of vision, and I know that Dean's going to share with you his thoughts. So, with that, Dean, I think the floor is yours, sir.
Great. Thank you, Phil. Hello, everyone. My name is Dean Marchetto. I'm an architect with MHS Architecture, located here in Hoboken. And we've been working on this project known as 1500 Grand. And I'm ready to present our vision for the site. So I'm going to share my screen.
Director, I think Councilman Russo, I've noticed if he could be promoted to a panelist.
Yep. Councilman Russo and Councilman Quintero have both been asked to join as panelists.
Great, thanks.
No problem.
And welcome to them as well.
Great. So is the screen visible to all? Okay, thank you.
Yes, Dean. Yep.
Okay, I would like to start out with just some photographs of the site so people can recognize the project area. This is the Poggi Press building. It is no longer being used for press. The site is known as Block 4 in the North End redevelopment area. It's a full block, and the full block goes from 15th Street up to 16th Street, where it backs into the sewage treatment plant and the electrical substation on 16th. And then it spans from Grand Avenue on the east to Adams Street on the west. It's a full block, 80,000 square feet, just under 2 acres. And these are various photographs of the site. You can see it's mostly a parking lot with the small building on the south end. Okay. Okay, this is our first image. This is a general factual image that will be describing the general parameters of the project, and then I'll go into a page-by-page description. This block, as you can see here on this lower left, is a block that's described, as I did before, a full block, and it's divided into 2 building sites. The one on the south end that faces 15th Street is known as Block 4A, and the one on the north end that is aligned on the linear park between the blocks is known as 4B. Some general information about the 2 buildings. These are 2 mixed-use residential buildings. They contain apartments, they contain parking, retail, flex space, and those uses. Building 4A, which is on 15th Street, which you see in the foreground of this image, is 8 stories, 7 residential floors above retail on the ground floor, and mechanical and lobby and all those non-residential uses. The building has 112 residential units. It has an indoor amenity space for the residents of 8,180 square feet. And on the ground floor, there is a commercial space, retail primarily fronting on 15th Street, and as well as a Grand, which you see in the corner here, of 14,630 square feet. The building in the back that is more north on the site, aligning in the other end with 16th Street, is a 12-story building. It has 308 residential units, and it has an indoor amenity space as well, 10,775 square feet. And on its ground floor, it has a non-residential commercial space that could be used as a flex space or retail or some kind of non-residential flex space, 12,630 square feet. And as I go through the plans, you can see how those align with the site. Total for the project, 22% of the site is open space that is not being built on, and that's a total of 17,680 square feet. There is a total of 175 parking spaces and 420 bicycle parking spaces. This next image is an image that will help you understand that there are 2 buildings with the linear park in between them. So building A is on the left, building B is on the right. You're looking west here across Grand Street, and in the distance, you can see the Palisades up on the top of the hill there with Union City in the background. So this is Grand Street in the foreground, and the basic premise of the plan is to have 2 buildings, as we do, with a linear park in between them, an open space, a public open space, that will link up with public open spaces on adjacent blocks. This particular open space here, you'll see that there's a crosswalk. That's a table. It's sort of like an extended speed bump that slows traffic so pedestrians can cross the street. So this is, you can see the buildings step back to kind of create an additional amount of light and air, especially here on the northern building. It has a significant step back to create additional light and air that comes into this public space. Okay, so let me start out just a little bit with the site so you can familiarize yourself with the site, and then I'll go into the building itself. Here are the 2 footprints of the buildings, 4A and 4B. On the 15th Street side, there is a setback of the building of 30 feet plus the sidewalk. So it's a total of about 40 feet. And on the left, on 15th Street, we have a bike lane on the left. It's a 10-foot wide two-way bicycle lane. And then we have a planting buffer, which is a zone that will manage the utilities, telephone poles and pipes. So there'll be a zone here. It also provides a little bit of a planted area to safeguard and protect the sidewalk itself. And the sidewalk itself is a 12-foot wide sidewalk in front of the retail. Then there's an 18-foot seating zone, which will be seatings, amenities, and then there's a 6-foot wide sidewalk again before you hit the planter and the bike lane. So it's a very wide, generous site layout for pedestrians along 15th Street that is pre-established by the city's traffic consultant and lines up consistently with projects specifically to the east. And then as you move up Grand Street, you also have a bike lane here. And in the middle between the two buildings, this is the linear park or open space. And adjacent to this space is two lobbies of the buildings. So they're like bookended to create an aperture, an entry into this public space. And there's, like I mentioned earlier, either retail or flex space along the ground floor, which I'll show you as we move through the building. In this space, we have step seating areas, we have landscaping. There are wires overhead that carry catenary lamps or lights. So the place will be illuminated at night without light poles. It's a very nice feature. The landscaping plan, it was prepared by Arterial, and they're here to answer questions if we have questions later on. But this is their drawing and this is their site plan design. These are some images on the ground floor that just suggest what this could look like when it was built out. But with that, I would like to just show you what this looks like quickly in 3D. This is the 15th Street and Grand Street intersection. You could see the bike lane, you could see the planting strips, you could see the sidewalk amenities and seating areas. And then further in the back is the retail along the front edge, the leading edge of 15th Street facade. And then if I move to the next one here, this is a close-up view, a three-dimensional view of what that linear park looks like. As I mentioned, there are two lobbies that provide bookends to either side opening. So you have pedestrian areas on either side, lights, people, windows, activity. And this is the flex space, the commercial flex space that opens up onto the linear park. This also gives you a close-up view of some of the materials on the building, which we'll get to as we move forward. Okay, so now let's begin with the building. These, again, are the two buildings, 4A on the left, 4B on the right. 4A, as I mentioned, had continuous retail frontage, turning Adams Street all around 15th Street facade, and then turning onto Grand Street as well. And this is a black and white version of the landscape plan I showed you before with the landscaping features, the sidewalks, the bike lanes, etc. So as you turn the corner to the linear park, this is where our main lobby is for our residential. You'll come in here, and then there'll be an elevated core with a stair, some internalized mechanical spaces, trash rooms, elevators, loading zone. There's a loading zone that comes in off of Adams Street, and people who are moving in or goods coming in and out of the building can come into the loading zone and get connected to the back of the vertical transportation. There's a transformer, a mechanical room, as well as a bike room. And in this building here, we have 112 bikes located right here. And the purpose here is to try to do as much, every building has a certain amount of or let's say utility uses. And the idea would be to create as much pedestrian-friendly light and air around the perimeter as possible. In this particular area where we need to locate the transformer and the mechanical rooms, we have a solid wall, but that'll be preserved for an art installation. And I could show you that in the elevation as we move forward. Regarding building B, which is the larger of the two buildings here. You can see the footprint is larger. This building not only contains bicycles, but this is the building that contains the parking. Because the footprint is large enough, we were able to put an internal garage inside the building that is masked on three sides by principal uses. So you don't see the garage. It's completely internalized, and it doesn't affect the view of the exterior of the building on these three sides. Now, activating the linear park and opening to the linear park is this flex retail space that I mentioned. It's 8,200 square feet here, but there's a mezzanine in both of these orange places so that there's a very tall ceiling, and within those tall spaces, there's a mezzanine up above. So if this was a restaurant, there could be seating areas up above. Or if it was a library, it could be a reading room. But there is a two-story space in both of these areas that allow for a mezzanine that adds to the potential square footage of this space. Down here in the blue, these are our residential lobbies. I mentioned the one on 4A, and on 4B, the lobby entrance is here. In order to manage the flood zone issues and the flood zone codes, we elevate the lobby above the DFE, and you can see as you come in, there are stairs up here. There's stairs and a ramp up in here that takes you from elevation 7 to elevation 14. So you go up 7 feet in the lobby to the elevators, which are elevated above ground level, about 7 feet to prevent any flood waters from coming into the elevator shafts. And that happens on both buildings as part of the flood requirements. So in the lobby here, which fronts on Grand Street, we have our package room, our management office, and the entrance to the parking is off of 16th Street here on the north end. And you enter in the garage here, and you start to go up what would be an internalized ramp that goes up in this point and goes to additional floors, as you will see. The mechanical areas for this building are located on the northwest corner, 2 transformer vaults required by public service, plus the mechanical areas for electrical rooms, plumbing rooms, fire sprinkler, intake, and the like. The trash room and loading dock is right here on 16th Street. The access would be on the north end of the building. Okay, so this is the ground floor for both, and it's important that that the park space, the open space, the public outdoor space is related to these commercial and retail uses on the ground floor. Okay, I mentioned there was a mezzanine. This is the mezzanine level. The ceiling height might be around 18 to 20 feet. So you have an opportunity to have additional space here in this orange color. And then this is the second level of the garage as it's moving up into the building. And this is what we call the second floor. You could see on building 4A, once you get up to the second floor, you're above the base, which is the retail, and the building starts to erode back and becomes more of a C shape. There's an outdoor amenity on the second floor, which opens to an amenity room on the inside, facing south towards the 15th Street side. And you could see the building is primarily lined with residential units around the 3 sides. On building 4B, again, the garage starts moving up to the 3rd deck of the garage. And you can see we line the garage with single-loaded residential uses and apartments to mask the garage. The garage can only be visible here on the 16th Street side for this portion of the building. And as I mentioned earlier, this north end faces North Hudson Sewerage Authority and the electrical substation. So this is more of a utility side of the building. So moving up, this is the 3rd floor plan. The apartments continue up to the 3rd floor. This is C-shape is maintained. And then again on building B, another deck of garage as you move up. And and then again lined with residential units. And as the building starts stepping up, there are certain balconies and outdoor space associated with those apartments that are above terraces. So never does a balcony open up over a public space. There's always a roof below it for safety purposes. And now we're moving up. This is the fourth and fifth floor. You can see the building starts to step back here on 4A, and we're above the garage now on 4B. And so the space in the middle becomes an amenity deck, again facing south. And as you saw in the rendering, the building starts to taper back and step back. And you can see it happening here. The building steps back. And then at that location on this floor, which is consistent with the amenity space above the garage, we have an amenity space inside the building that would give way or open up. So this could be a fitness or community room inside the building. And now we're able to do, rather than a single loaded corridor, a double loaded corridor in a C-shaped building, which will get smaller and smaller as we go up the building. This is the fourth and the fifth floor. This is the sixth and the seventh. Balconies are starting to be shown above the patio here. And then when you move up in the buildings to sixth to eighth floor, the building starts stepping back again to the right. The C starts to become a J, and the apartments still continue in this configuration. When you get to the ninth floor, you're above the 8-story building 4A. That roof of that building will be a green roof, which you see here, which occupies 40% of the roof. There's also an elevator and a stair that'll come up to the roof with a roof deck on that building. And in this image, you can start to see the stepping of the building as it's stepping down. Those become private terraces for the apartments that are behind them. And then once we get up to the top of the building, the 4B building, that roof also has 40% of its surface area as a green roof. It also has an elevator and a stair and an outdoor amenity deck as well, which is this hatched area here. So these are technical drawings, the elevations of the building. The materials that we're selecting, you can see in the renderings, but for informational purposes, this is a charcoal style brick that will be on the base, which you can see here. This is the 15th Street facade. This is all retail, as I mentioned earlier, with sort of a brick base that then steps back into a metal and glass building. And you may recall there was a C shape on 15th Street, and that's what this is. This is in the back, but these are the two forward wings of the C. There's a combination of glass that is shown in the blue, and the metal panels are shown in this case, a gray color. The actual colors are down here on the bottom right of the drawing. And as I mentioned on building 4A, the lobby in the linear courtyard comes around. There's a bike room, and then there's a mechanical area, and this is that area that's preserved for an art installation, maybe a mural, to be determined, but this is what we would like to do to kind of mask the mechanical areas on that end of the building. And this is the Grand Street elevation. I know you saw the rendering before, but in this case, you can see the section with the number of floors listed here, the heights, the building heights. The way the two buildings are conceived is that the building on the left has a 1-story brick base and 7 stories of glass and metal. But the larger building, which is building 4B on the north end, you can see the brick is a little heavier. It's the same materials, just used with a different density, so that even though the buildings are designed to match and complement each other, they have a different form made with the same materials to create two different feelings. Complementary buildings that aren't identical to each other. And then once you reach this 8th floor, which is the topping out point of 4A, the building goes back to metal and glass as a lighter expression of the top of the building. And then this is the Adams Street. It's kind of the reverse of what you saw on Grand. However, you can see on the Adams Street side, there are loading dock doors, transformer, and mechanical rooms. And we continue the brickwork all the way to the bottom and try to organize those openings into the general organization of the window and column rhythm above. And then let's see, here is the 16th Street side facing 16th Street. You might consider this the back of the building, facing north against 16th Street. But here again, this building B, this is where your loading dock is, your parking entrance, and the mechanical rooms. And you can see there's a consistency with the brick coming down, so that you try to incorporate those mechanical uses into the facade, so it feels like a homogeneous design. And then this here is the linear park view of building B. So you're in the linear park, you're looking north, and you can see the flex space, the commercial flex space here on the bottom, as well as the lobby on the right, and then the C-shaped building above the parking. And then this is the piece of the building that's set way back as the C turns around on 16th Street. And this is a cross section through the building to try to explain the step backs and the floors. This is the cross section on 15th Street. Here you could see in the commercial space, you have the additional height for a mezzanine, which is what this is. So it's one tall story with a mezzanine to kind of create a two-story interior within the commercial space. And then the lobby itself also enjoys the high headroom that will allow us to accommodate the elevation for the flood zone increase. So you see this dark area on the bottom that's getting folks up from the front of the building into the lobby up to the flood elevation, which is required to get us above the flood zone, where you can then access the elevators. And then you can see the residential floors shown in yellow and how the building steps back at different levels. Same thing with building 4B. The linear park is in the middle here. You have the flex space facing linear park, the lobby on building B, again with the elevated lobby floor to get folks up above the flood zone to the elevators. And then you have the parking level shown in gray above that. And then the residential buildings, the residential floors proceeding up to the 12th floor. And again, here you can start to see step backs. And I think these step backs are very helpful in allowing more light and air into the linear park between them. With that, it's a general description. I have two renderings. This is more of a close-up rendering of the corner that we showed you, the landscaping. You could see here the metal and glass, the dark brick, the chamfered corners to create a turn on the base, the high ceilings in the commercial space, and the outdoor seating areas. Again, this is an 8-story building here on 15th Street, and then the one behind it on 16th Street, and the linear park is a 12-story building. And you can see that there's a real effort made to create a pedestrian ground floor, pedestrian friendly, all the way up Grant Street and into the linear park. And the next image I have, which is my final image, is this rendering, which is looking north. It's a full size, and you can really get a feeling of the balconies and how they sit over the top of a roof, so they're not over the exterior public area. You can see the design of the exterior of the building with glass and vertical metal columns, and the setbacks up here, as well as the brick on the base, and then the planted amenity deck above there. So you have a lot of green in the building, and this is, again, that crosswalk that takes you from one site, let's say 4 to over to 5, where the viewer is seen in this image. And then the commercial space on the ground floor, the kind of lighting that would allow one to feel the open space inside the commercial space, and then the step backs with these private terraces for apartments that adjoin those levels.
Is this looking west, or you said north? You mean
Oh,
west?
this is looking west.
Thank you.
Yeah, looking west. If I said north, I misspoke. It's looking west. But in general, this is a general overall view and description of our proposal. And with that, I guess I could rest my direct testimony and answer questions, or pass it over to RJ.
Actually, thanks, Dean. That's you did a great job. Thank you very much. Was someone from Arterial going to be presenting? And Dean, yeah, thanks again. That was a really great presentation. Do we have someone from Arterial to present the linear park, or we?
Well, I was asked to do it, Chris,
Okay.
so I did it.
That's all good. That's all
If you
good.
have any questions, Arterial's on the line, and if I can't answer it, certainly they're available to do so.
Makes sense. No, just wanted to clarify that. So yeah, next up is RJ Theophil from Community Development. RJ is going to give a quick rundown on how the plan complies or deviates from the North End redevelopment plan. RJ, the proverbial mic is yours.
Thank you, Chris. I am just going to share my screen. Okay, all set up. Yeah, so as Chris said, I'm going to go through the proposed amendments to the North End redevelopment plan that are necessary to effectuate the project that Dean just went over at 1500 Grand Street. Before I go into the specifics of the project, I thought it'd be helpful to kind of go some background on the North End redevelopment plan. As you can see in this diagram, the plan covers the area north of 14th Street and west of Park Avenue in the northwest portion of the city. The plan really envisioned this area transitioning from its current industrial uses into a mixed-use neighborhood with residential, commercial, retail, and high-quality public spaces mixed throughout. So you can see the project area highlighted in a red box on the screen of this diagram here now. This figure identifies the sites within the sites and subdistricts within the North End redevelopment plan. Each of these sites and subdistricts have unique goals and plan requirements. The project area for 1500 Grand is highlighted here in red. It's within the Linear Park subdistrict and Site 4. You can see it's comprised of Site 4A and 4B. The Linear Park subdistrict is defined by a commercial corridor along 15th Street. And then there's a series of connected mid-block linear parks through sites 4 through 7A. So it's Site 4, a 30-foot setback from 15th Street and a 55-foot wide linear park divides the property into two buildable areas. You can see on the right of this slide right here. With Site 4A, which fronts 15th Street to be entirely a commercial building, and Site 4B, which fronts the linear park to be a residential mixed-use building. So for the project that's being proposed today, the main two amendments are the conversion of Site 4A, so that's the one that fronts 15th Street, from a commercial building, as envisioned from the plan, to a residential mixed-use building, and also revised maximum building heights. So I'm going to go through each of these in a little bit more detail and explain the differences between the existing plan requirements and what would be changed. So as I mentioned before, the plan calls for Site 4A. This is the front building, the southern building, to be developed into commercial building with office spaces on the upper floors and retail on the ground floor. This framework is shown on the existing figure 35. You can see the front building 4A highlighted in yellow. So the proposal as it is now would change this building from that commercial to a residential mixed-use building with residential units on the upper floors and retail on the ground floor. So in order to change Site 4A from that commercial to residential use, the plan's FAR requirements would also need to be changed. You'll note for this and other requirements in the redevelopment plan, the standards are established for either baseline development or incentive development. And that's really determined by the community benefits that being provided by a project. So tonight's proposal is for incentive development. So you notice all the project development requirements are for the incentive standards. So in order for the project to be compliant, the minimum non-residential FAR, so that's shown in yellow here. On the left hand, we have the existing, and on the right, we have the proposed. So the existing for site 4 is a 1.3 FAR, and then the proposed would reduce that down to a 0.23, which is about a little over 18,000 square feet of retail commercial space. And then the change for the maximum residential FAR, the floor area ratio, the existing in the plan calls for 2.6. And based on the proposal tonight, it would raise to a 4.16, or about 332,000 square feet of residential space. One point to note out is that the existing standards kind of allows for 312,000 square feet of total floor area. Under the new proposed FARs, that goes up to 351,165 square feet of floor area. So quickly, just as Dean showed, what those non-residential spaces in the FAR and how we calculate that, it's comprised of these two retail and retail flex spaces, the one being in building 4A along 15th Street, and the other being the retail flex space in building 4B that fronts the linear park. So these are the two non-residential spaces that would be provided. The other major amendment to the plan is the maximum building height allowed under incentive development standards. So the plan currently allows 80 feet above the design flood elevation under the current standards, and this proposal would raise that to 99 feet above the DFE. And then for site 4B, which is the northernmost part of the site, that building would, under the plan, be allowed to go to 100 feet above DFE, and that, under the proposal tonight, would go up to 143 feet above DFE. This drawing here just illustrates that. You could see that both sites, we measure this height from the design flood elevation. So it's not from grade, but it's from this the flood height for flood damage prevention measures. So this is showing these two right here. And then the open space for the site is provided within two spaces. The first being the 15th Street Promenade along 15th Street over here next to the cycle track, and the linear park that is located between building 4A and building 4B. One of the benefits of the project is that it will actually exceed the maximum open space required by the redevelopment plan. So as shown down in the bottom corner, the plan calls for a minimum of 20% of the site area to be open space. This proposal tonight actually exceeds that by about 2%, or about 680 square feet. This increase is a result of the creative building design and the city's negotiations with the developer. And with that, lastly, we have that the building stepbacks in the North End plan generally call for stepbacks at the mid-level. So that's your second floor to your 9th floor, and then again at the top level. So you can see this is building 4B. There are two locations on building 4B where we kind of deviate a little bit from that 5-foot step back requirement at those 2 points. One of them being on Adam Street. You'll notice the mid-level, there's no setback. And then when you look at 16th Street, there's no setback at the mid-level also. But the proposal, as you'll see before, does include a fairly large terracing along the portion of the building that fronts the linear park to allow exceptional amount of light and air to come in above and beyond kind of what the plan calls for in terms of step backs. And with that, that's the end of the plan amendments. I'm going to turn it back to Chris. I think we'll open up for some questions.
Thanks, RJ. Great job. So we already have a hand up. We got
Director.
Yep. Councilman.
If I could just kick it off, I just had a question I wanted to start with, and I don't know if any other council people do. But I've got a question for Dean. Dean, your presentation. Thanks for your presentation and for the work you've done on this. One of the things that you didn't include in the presentation, which I think is important for the community to see, is the interrelation between this property and the neighboring property, which I believe you're also the designer for, architect for, that has a similar linear park and similar building heights, two buildings on the property, 8-story and 12-story. I'm wondering if you could speak to that. I don't know if you have any pictures, but the interrelation between the two property designs, it seems like something that is worthy of discussion, or at least sharing.
Oh, Dean, you're on mute.
Oh, there we go. So thank you for your question, Phil. And you are correct. The building that we're proposing here on Block 4 is similar in its form and arrangement as the building on Block 5, meaning that the linear parks line up so that as you move west from let's say Willow through the developments and you come to these blocks, the linear park lines up, and there's a consistency of architectural form both on 15th Street with a linear park that connects, and then the larger building on 16th Street. And I think that's the intent of the plan, to create an open space, a continuous open space from one end of the plan to the other end of the plan. And these two buildings, both the building we proposed on site 5 and this one on site 4, do just that. They line up exactly. And in fact, the extra 2% of open space on this project that Advance is proposing, this opens that aperture where RJ was talking about the additional 2%. We were able to open the aperture to the linear park. So it's wider at its mouth where you cross over Grand Street than it would normally be required to be. So hopefully that answers your question, but there is I don't have an image or a site view showing both projects together, but they are in fact related and similar in form. Both are 4 stories, both are 8 stories in the back. I mean, 8 stories in the front and 12 stories in the back, and the linear parks are in alignment.
And aren't the 8-story and 12-story similarly tiered back? Is similar construction in terms of their interrelation with the street, that the same way that they I don't know if scallop is the right word, but the way that they fall
Yes.
back from the street. Again, similar. I don't know if it's identical because I haven't seen them, but I know the 8-story. I do recall that they were 8-story and 12-story, similar orientation. So I guess my question is, and again, you are the designer of both properties, is that right? I think
yes.
you are. Yeah. So
not me personally, but the office as a team.
Your office, yeah.
Yeah.
So again, the idea here is that there's a consistency with respect to the height, the materials, and the layout of the properties that are going to be neighbors east and west of each other.
Yes, there is a consistency, and they do step back. This one on site 4 actually has a more dramatic step back than site 5, but it's not for any other reason that the building's design is a little different. But when you look at them together and you're standing across the street on 15th Street, and you look at them, you'll recognize a similar form, a similar architectural style that creates a consistency, which I believe is consistent with the goals and objectives in the redevelopment plan.
Perhaps in the next iteration, or when this gets submitted to the city council or the community development committee, you could include those visions, those images. I think that might be helpful to the community development committee, Dean.
Certainly.
One other thing I have a question about is if you could go to the slide that in your presentation where it showed the orientation of the lateral park on, I think it was building 4A, where there was the art wall and the bike.
Let me share my screen again.
Yep.
Hopefully you could see this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where would you like me to go? Would you like me to go to the elevation that shows the wall? Is that, let's see,
keep
this?
Going. Not. Actually, if you go back a little further. keep going. Yeah, actually, go one forward. Sorry, the one that had the gray boxes that showed the mechanicals. Yep, that's it. Yep. Okay. So my recollection, Dean, is that with respect to the other property that you designed, that wall where it has transformer mechanical bike room, which is facing on that is the area on the other property that you designed where it is a library annex, or that's what's considered to be, this area on in similar building. Maybe it's not the exact location, but it's similar location facing the lateral park. And the concern I had with respect to this design is that it strikes me that it seems like a bit of a lost opportunity to have a solid set of walls with mechanicals. And I recognize an art wall could be attractive, but that without having windows facing there, without having any kind of public space on that lateral park there, that, it struck me that it seemed like a lost opportunity there, that it might be better to have, transformer and mechanicals on the interior, like on the if you look at, was it 4B across the way, you have all your transformers and materials sort of on the walls by the sewage authority side of the building, the less, public side of the building. Whereas here you have a lot of mechanicals on the most public significant part of the lateral park, and I'm wondering if you could address that.
I understand your question. It's a very good one. Thank you for that. Basically, these mechanical uses must be on the ground floor, Phil. Public service requires have direct access to transformers on the ground floor. They give you certain room dimensions, and you can't move this to the interior of the building. It's just not possible. Every new building has requirements for utility access. And so the transformer, any vehicular entrance, a loading zone, all require perimeter area on the ground floor. Maybe there's something we could do with this mechanical, but there are sprinkler pipes coming in, underground water supplies, and all of the utilities, when they come into your property with either a water line, a gas line, an electrical line, the minute you get into the property, that's where you need to have your meter. So those rooms have to be located on the perimeter of the building. I can't make them interior. Now, we had to make a choice on where is the least impactful place to do that. We could certainly move the transformer here on 15th and Adams and not here just by flipping it here. That's possible, but I guess we made an assumption looking from the redevelopment plan that we wanted retail all along 15th Street. So that's the rationale for putting this in what I consider the least affected part of the building. Grand Street is closer to Willow and the waterfront, so I think this is a little bit more prioritized here than to put my transformer on the Grand Street side facing the other new building that we talked about earlier. And on building B, which maybe is not a problem, our mechanicals are here. I need a certain footprint for the garage, so I can't move all of those here. I need an entrance. And we took it into consideration to try to move those things as best we could in the least impactful places. And where we couldn't, which is right here, we have an opportunity to do an art installation. But if you can make a suggestion, given those parameters, I'd be happy to consider it.
From my perspective, I think that if the retail on the far western side was a little small, where you have the hand there, was a little smaller, you could still have a substantial, retail on 15th Street, but maybe, on the furthest western part of the retail, that you could have more mechanicals there and still have, exactly, and still have, and then open up to the public the lateral park, because I assume the lateral park is going to continue to the west. And that, by having things like a bike room and mechanicals and transformer room, that you're, even if it is an attractive art installation, it could create, either other retail opportunities or other public facing spaces to open up this lateral park, which is really going to be a jewel back there for public enjoyment.
Yeah. We do intend to have the bike room all glass, so you can see people in there with their bikes. Not that that's great, but it's better than the solid wall or mechanicals. But when you look at all of the gray area in this building, this is all the service and utilities. Only a certain part of it has to be available to the exterior wall. These interior elements like trash holding and trash compacting and back of house corridors, all of that stuff we tried to keep to the center. But I'm just thinking that the corridor along 15th Street was more of a priority. But we can certainly take your question and comments into consideration, and we could certainly consider moving the transformer here or the mechanical room here and let go of some of the retail on this end. We could consider that.
Dean, I think Councilman Cohen has a really good point. It might be that I think we'd want to keep the retail on the corner of Adams and 15th, but where that line sort of bifurcates the retail, there might be that opportunity to put the mechanical or the transformer.
Right. Have it a narrower retail space. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, a narrow retail space on the corner that opens up as it goes east.
We can certainly look into that. Be happy to do that.
That'd be great. Thank you, Dean. Thanks, Director. All right, that's all I had. I don't know if any other council people had any comments, but if not, we could open it up to whomever has their hands up. Thanks.
So you're going back to your zoning board days. That's a good eye. So we have a hand up from Dana Minturn. I'm going to allow you to speak. Dana, floor is yours.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Beautiful building. I have no obviously issues with the building. I do have a question about 15th Street. If you've ever driven down Adams Street and you're going to either cross over 15th Street or make a right-hand turn, you'll notice that it's significantly higher than Adams Street. If you were to park in front of the beer garden, your car is like half turned over because it dips down so far there. So my question is 15th Street itself going to be lowered? Or are you raising this property to meet 15th Street?
Who wants to take that?
Jess, you want to take it? Yeah, you've been working on that for quite some time. So,
the redevelopment plan talks about this issue quite a bit, and that we recognize that the roads in that area are rather uneven and are sinking in some locations. And so kind of in tandem with this, the city is working on a separate road elevations project where we've hired a consultant to determine what the street elevations throughout the north end should be to better effectuate drainage and to make sure that the high-level sewer system that the North Hudson Sewage Authority is currently designing and soon to be constructing will actually be effective. So our work involves working with the consultant to determine what the grade elevations should be for the sidewalks, for the curbs, for the street center lines, for the inlet locations, and all of that. And then, and this is probably more than you wanted to know, giving that.
No, it's not more than I wanted to know. That actually was my concern with that.
Okay.
The surrounding buildings, my building is a block and a half away. It should not be affected by it, but I think just generally speaking, it's a concern. It would be a large concern, obviously, to the beer garden or anything, because if you were to build this building and not correct 15th Street, you're literally creating a situation where in a rainstorm like we had on Sunday night, where the water is just going to flood into the lower properties, my building being one of them. And I mean, I was around during Hurricane Sandy. I know what that area looked like. It was all underwater. And that really brings me to my second question, which is, you've taken into consideration bringing up the lobbies and the mechanicals and all those things, which are wonderful. But how do you feel that this building's ever going to be able to attract a really good retail space when they're located in a flood zone with no ability to stop stormwater from coming in there, when they're going to invest potentially millions of dollars into building out restaurants or a supermarket or things of that nature, knowing they could be wiped out in a storm.
That's
The
somewhat
retail
related.
space is really at risk in this building.
So
Somewhat related to the what I was speaking of earlier in the North Hudson Sewage Authority's high-level storm sewer project, where they're going to be separating all the storm and the sanitary sewer lines as part of that project. And also, you know, in tandem with them separating those lines, the city's actually establishing new elevations for the street to accommodate that storm sewer project and to create better drainage throughout the area, and then also providing that information to the developers so they can align their curb lines and their building corners and, you know, entrances all at the appropriate elevation so it all works together. There's also a significant amount of floodproofing that the architects are proposing, and Dean can go into that.
Yeah, so all the retail spaces, Dana, will be floodproof, wet floodproof, which means that during storm conditions, they're going to be floodproof for any kind of storm surge. And then the residential areas will be floodproofed as well. And there's two different ways of floodproofing these areas, but anything below the DFA will be floodproof, dry floodproofed. I think I said wet floodproof, but what I meant is dry floodproof, meaning that it's going to be a sealed space with barriers that will come up and close off the windows up into the height of the flood, the designed flood elevation, and to protect that retail so that anything and this is a requirement for all new buildings in a flood zone, and these buildings will have that technology built into them to prevent water from coming in a flood event.
I believe the system has to be passive for this amount of linear retail space, and that the glass has to be a certain rating, up to 8 feet in height to withstand the hydrostatic pressure of a flood event.
That's correct.
I would just hate to see a beautiful building like this be like ShopRite, where there's sandbags sitting out on the street, 365 days a year, waiting for the next storm to come. Anyhow, wonderful. Thanks for the answers. I'm happy to hear that you'll be addressing 15th Street, because that obviously, first off, it's just tough to navigate, period. You really, just to even get into the street to see if anybody's coming to make the turn, because it's such a weird incline, it's difficult. So no doubt, I mean, and obviously I know you'll use elevations and whatnot, but you can tell just by the naked eye that the street itself sits way higher than the surrounding properties. So I'm glad that'll be addressed. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Dana. Thanks for the questions. Thanks, Jess. Thanks, Dean, for helping. All right, so the next question is coming from Philip Golub. I'm going to allow you to speak. The floor is yours.
Hey, how are you? Great presentation. Thank you, everyone. Are these documents available online anywhere?
No, not as yet. We are still in the process of negotiating a redevelopment agreement with the developer. So once the agreement is ready for council docket, they will all be made public. But this presentation is being recorded and will be posted to the city website and can be viewed by any member of the public going forward. But once we have, like I said, once the agreement is ready and it's ready for council vote, the documents will be public.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, next question is coming from Will Titus.
Hi, everyone. Sorry if I missed this, if it was already discussed, but what is the proposed height of the complex, or I guess at the highest point, and will that have any effect on the views of people up in the Palisades?
So I believe the height, and we'd have to look back at the elevation. I think the height is about 150 from grade. RJ, you had a really nice rendering with the height elevation. So it's about
It's 157 from grade and then 143 above design flood elevation.
and then yeah, so assume 157 above grade, and then another. I don't know how high the bulkhead is. The bulkhead for the elevator is probably another 15, or I'm gonna be, let's say it's 20 feet. I don't have it in front of me, but I'm just being liberal with it. The height of the
Okay, so what's
Palisades, the height of the Palisades around this point, around this area is about 180, 185, 190. So it would not affect our neighbors to the west.
Gotcha. Okay. So then as far as like how many floors, what's that about like 15 or something like that?
It's actually 12. The taller building is 12 stories. They just have taller
Gotcha.
floor heights.
Gotcha. Okay. And I probably missed this too, but total number of residential units?
420 with 10% affordable.
Okay. Got it. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions? All right. Going once, going twice.
Thank you, Chris.
All right. Well, I guess so. No, thank you, Councilman. All right. Well, I guess that concludes tonight's meeting. Since we don't have it, just to be safe, I'm gonna go back. Will Titus, you still have your hand up. Just gonna be safe. Will, do you have another question?
Yeah, sorry, I put my hand back up. I figured if
Yeah.
there's no other questions, real quick.
Yeah.
And this again was probably maybe discussed already. I joined a little bit late, so sorry about that. But as far as, I'm sure there's a lot of extensive thought gone into how this is going to affect Hoboken's infrastructure in terms of power grids, water supply, sewage, electricity. I mean, all those things, right? Traffic patterns. And I'm sure that all these studies have been done before they even approach a project like this, right?
Yeah, I mean everything. So in terms of power grid infrastructure, I mean there's utility connections and there's utility conversations that the developer has to have with an agency like PSE&G in order to even have the building. They have to get a will serve. In terms of infrastructure, the building is providing, right now you have a 100% impervious lot. The building is providing 40% green roof, separating their storm and sanitary sewers. So we're looking at an improved condition in that respect. In terms of the amount of, I'll say wastewater produced by the building, again, there's a will serve that would have to be issued by NHSA for a building to even open up. I mean, if NHSA will not give a permit to a building or won't allow a building to open if there's no capacity. So, and there are, what other impacts the building or a project like this would incur. We also have a community benefit payment associated with the project. It's $10 million that would go towards something like road raising, road elevations, the building of a light rail of 15th Street. And by local redevelopment housing law, there has to be a rational nexus between community benefit payments and a project, right? So all these things combined, when we're talking about redevelopment projects and the impact on the community, we
Gotcha. Yeah, I just always think about, it's kind of no secret. Anyone from this area, we know there's constant water main breaks and things like that all over Hoboken all the time. It seems like more and more these days. So just, I don't know if that has anything to do with development in this capacity, but that's kind of partially where that question was coming from a little bit. So I'm assuming they'll be talking to, what is it, Suez or whoever they need to, as well as PSE&G when it comes to all the utilities.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, absolutely. And a lot of that has to do with also the age of the infrastructure being placed. And that's why I mentioned with a project like this, we mentioned 15th Street will be redone at some point in the near future. We're going to have to, North Hudson Sewage is proposing a high level sewer system for the entire area, which would, separate the combined sewer, the combined system in the area. So we hope to mitigate any impacts that the project will have.
Great. All right. Thank you. So I think now I'm good.
All good. Oh, thanks, Will. Okay, we have a few other hands. Next person is Liz Orteco. Liz, I'm going to allow you to speak. Liz, floor is yours.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, just a question about the redevelopment plan amendments. How similar are those amendments to what we had to do on Block 5?
Site 5, the Bijou property, very similar. A lot of them, I mean, I don't have the Bijou, I don't have the two open in front of me to answer, but as Dean explained, these are two very similar projects. The height of the building actually in January, we're not to tip everyone's hand on it, but we're actually Bijou in getting ready for going to the planning board. They've had to meet with our floodplain manager, and they've had to make similar amendments to they're going to need similar amendments to their site to comply with floodplain, similar to what the Advanced project did. So it's actually at the end of the day when that future amendment is considered and approved, or hopefully approved, because they have to comply with floodplain. These will have very similar plan amendments or plan requirements in the end product.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Thank you for your question. All right, next question is coming from Vikas Nijam. I'm going to allow you to speak, and I hope I got your name wrong. Please correct me if I mispronounced your name.
It's fine, don't worry. I'm sorry if you covered this before, but for the 520 apartments, how many car parking spaces are going to be included in the buildings? And what's the plan for the roads to stop traffic kind of backing up as a result of all of the new traffic that's going to be through that development?
Dean, what's the parking number?
175.
175 is correct.
But 420 bike parking spaces. And we did do a full traffic study, or I should say they did a full traffic study, and we hired our own traffic experts to do an analysis of that traffic study.
And what's the impact, or can you say what their anticipated impact is?
I know that there are some mitigation recommendations to come out of that process, right? But I don't have the study in front of me.
Yeah, typically what we do is we defer when we do a redevelopment agreement, we'll say that the planning board essentially will have the planning board engineer will have to opine on their traffic review, their traffic report. We will give them our comments on their traffic review, and the traffic report, I'm just going to make up an example. It'll say that maybe a light needs to be added at a certain intersection, or maybe it needs to be upgraded. So the planning board engineer would then incorporate that into the review process at the planning board, and that would be a condition of their approval down the line.
I should say that for the project next door at Site 5, the Bijou site, we hired the same firm to review their traffic impact study. And between the two reviews, I think there were like, I don't know, at least 100 comments from our traffic expert. And there was a lot of back and forth in looking at the methodology of the traffic study and the recommendations to come out of that. So traffic has definitely been considered for the area.
Just on that though, so it sounds like you're doing the analysis on your proposed site, and you just happen to be doing the analysis for site 5 as well as for site 4 because you have to sharing the same architect. But for the entire development, is somebody doing that analysis as a whole, or are you doing it individually, or how is this working?
When they do the traffic study, they take into consideration approved and planned development, right? And so they can look at what the redevelopment plan and the plans for the areas have in terms of proposed development, and all of that is taken into consideration when they're estimating their trip generation amounts. So yes, I can answer yes, but even with that analysis done for site 5A next door, we're also doing it for this site. We require the traffic studies being done for all of the projects, when they're substantial in size, particularly.
And we understand also that we can't, there are going to be cars, and that's why there's 175 spaces. But when we look at these projects, we generally try to, 175 spaces for 420 units, that's below a 0.5 threshold. So we also, as Jess mentioned, we are encouraging more people to use bicycles. We are collecting a substantial community benefit payment, and we're pushing through with trying to get a light rail station on 15th Street and working with NJ Transit. So, us as planners, and we're tasked with, I guess, trying to mitigate the impact of vehicles and trying to encourage more walkability from a general standpoint. But yes, there will be cars. And as Jess stated, we've
evaluated the truck routes as well, and 16th Street is proposed to convert from a one-way street to a two-way street. That will definitely help with overall traffic in the area, and particularly truck traffic. 15th Street, as you've seen from the plans, is envisioned to be, a multimodal street that, with having a two-way bike lane that will ultimately go the full length of 15th Street and beyond, will make the area more amenable to biking and other modes of micromobility, hopefully getting, cars off the road there. So we are taking a holistic approach in the area. And, our traffic engineers, made tons of recommendations on both projects. Like, we should have the drop-off zone should be in this location for, for vehicle drop-offs, not over here, because there'd be more impacts over here. So they're really looked at it, both on the micro scale and the macro scale.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you for your questions.
Thank you.
Will Titus, I'm going to allow you to speak because your hand is still up. Just want to make sure we're good. Will?
Oh, nope, I'm good. Sorry about that. I thought, yeah, I could go over it.
All good.
I'm
all good.
set. I appreciate it, though.
Just want to make sure everyone has their chance.
Yep.
And same with Liz. I see your hand is still up, so I'm going to allow you to speak. Let me know if you have another question. Liz?
No, I'm sorry. I don't have another question. I didn't.
Oh.
Apologies.
No, all good. All good. Just wanted to make sure you had a chance. All right. So with that, I see no other hands raised. So we can call it a great meeting. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Thank you, Dean. Thank you, RJ. Thank you, Jess, for all helping out with this time. Thank you, Councilman Cohen, for leading in and asking questions in the beginning. So yeah, with that, we'll conclude. Everyone have a happy holiday, and we will keep everyone posted on next steps. Thanks all.
Thank you.